finally having a moment when it's quiet to be able to share the story about Gideon and his vaccine injuries. And I just wanted to have some uninterrupted time to do that, which is very difficult, but Brian took the kids, ran an errand, and so I had a minute and I was going to get on and just try to do a little video, because sometimes it helps for people to really hear. It makes it more personal, and I don't know that I've ever really shared Gideon's story. I have a blog and I've shared there, and I've written about it a couple times, but when Gideon, he is now 8, when he was a baby, it was about, so when Gideon, who's now 8, was a baby, it was about a couple weeks after we had his shots, and he went in for his normal shots. He had gotten them when he was a couple months, and then he was almost 6 months. We were getting him again. It was about 2 weeks after that. It was a whirlwind of a day. I remember it. It's just hard looking back on something like this and trying to remember these things, because he was really grumpy, and he gave me a couple of weird faces that day. I remember thinking, oh, that's strange, just kind of grimacy looks, and I hadn't before in Gideon. I stepped into the kitchen. This was right after he woke from a nap. I stepped into the kitchen. I had laid him down in his bouncy seat in the family room, which is right off of the kitchen, and stepped in the kitchen for a minute and went back, and he had fallen asleep in the bouncy seat, like hard falling asleep. I was like, that's so weird. I bounced him a little because I was kind of concerned, because he had just woken up, you don't usually fall right back asleep. And I even called his name and he didn't wake. I grabbed him up and he was really limp, and I just thought, this is not right. There's something not right. I called Brian and told him that he needs to come home because I feel like something's wrong with Gideon. He came home and we just kind of chalked it up to him being tired. He was up for 20 minutes in the night. Wish Cody would sleep that long. Like Gideon used to sleep all night long, and was up that night a little bit longer than normal. And so we thought, okay, well, he's just tired. And I thought, well, I'll nurse him and let him go back to bed, take a nap. When I got back home later in the evening, Hope and my mom and I had went to dinner, and got back home, and Gideon was still like fussy, just not himself. I gave him a bath, which he normally really loved, and I gave him a little Tylenol, thinking maybe his throat's hurting. I made an appointment for the doctor the next day, thinking, okay, well, maybe, sorry, I don't know what's going on with this. Maybe he needs to be seen, okay? And so, and it was like 5:30 in the evening. I had just fed him, and I sat him up in my lap, and I was burping him, and he went limp. His eyes got real glossy, and his mouth turned blue, and it seemed like he quit breathing. So it was a scary ever experienced with any of my kids, and I thought, okay, something's not right here. I told Brian, I said, we gotta call 911, and he says, let's get him to urgent care. I said, no, we gotta call 911. So I'm like frantic, kind of freaking out, because I've got this limp little baby, and I'm like, I didn't know if I was gonna need to do CPR or what. I remember yelling at Gregory, Grandma. And my mom lives one door down, and I just wanted her to come to help me with the rest of the kids and stuff. And he went down there, and my mom said she was standing there staring at her like he was in shock. He didn't know what to say at first, and all he could get out was Gideon. So my mom, came rushing over. then we got 911, and they told Brian that I needed to calm down because I was really, freaking out. Which I think anybody would be in that situation with never having something like that happen. I mean, I was thinking he's dying in my arms and I don't know what to do, So they got here, the ambulance got here, firemen got here first, and it felt like it took forever for them to get here, but they got here really quick, like 2 minutes. But when you're in the middle of that, it takes forever. Gideon came to again, but was very tired and very just lethargic and not himself. So, a lot of tests, blood work, CT scan, spinal tap, and X-rays at the hospital, and he had some more seizures when we got to the ER. They lasted about like a minute long. He didn't even have to be sedated to go in the little CT scan thing, You would think a baby being all wiggly would have to, but he didn't have to because he was so tired from this. It's like running a marathon. And they put an IV in him and gave him antibiotics and fluid. And they told me that it would be like that for Gideon, that he would be tired because it was like running a marathon. I was able to take a few pictures just with my phone, which was good because I sent them out and had a lot for Gideon. And we're thankful that they didn't have to put him to sleep to do the CT scan because that scared me. And they were able to do everything just there. Remember, we went to Santa Paula first, and then they had to put us in an ambulance again to go to Ventura County because they had a room ready for us there to stay for a little bit. We got all settled. One of the things I do remember with Gideon is I remember him sucking his thumb, and I was like, I'm so thankful for this thumb right now. It was such a comfort to him. He needed that, just to suck his thumb, and I was remembering being really thankful for that he did that then. And it's almost like that phase just lasted just for that time in the hospital because he didn't do it a whole lot after that. They gave him Keppra to prevent the seizures. They wanted to stop the seizures from happening, so they gave him that medication. He had had 7 there in the hospital. And they were trying to figure out if something was going on in the brain, like that he had a tumor or anything like that. And they said the EKG and the EEG came back normal, and they were trying to figure out like if there was something bigger going on in there that they couldn't see, and everything seemed to come back normal with that. So we were there for a while and doing all these different tests and everything in the hospital, and he came out of it and he was happy. He had happy times too. It wasn't just limp baby laying in the hospital bed, but it was difficult. I remember being really frustrated trying to nurse him with all these cords and everything on him, and trying to climb up in the hospital they had for him to be able to feed him. It was annoying. I just remember being thankful too for the people at home who were helping out. I know that Levi, my brother's school, and Brian's stepmom helped out, and I remember Mike and Brenda visiting us in the hospital, and Brian's dad, and just God really carried us through that time. It was really hard because you don't know what's going on, so it's like the unknowns. I will never forget it, and the journey continued with this. We kept having issues and problems with Gideon. We had so many people on our side to help us. Mom had a friend, Sally Lodgel, who was a nurse, and she helped us a lot get in with a doctor, a neurologist that helped us out to help get Gideon the right dose of medicine and stuff. We needed him to be on a medicine in order to train the brain to stop seizing, because otherwise it would continue to do it. So after that first, whole ordeal, he came home, and we just tried to manage him on the medication. He was put on 2 different kinds, and I didn't doctor as much at the one that we were with, and so we were trying to work out some details to get to a different one down in Tarzana, a really good neurologist. And the beginning of February, just a couple weeks after this had all happened, we had been to the ER the night before with Gideon, and he woke up that morning, and he just was acting strange. He wasn't acting himself. It's like he changed. He seemed sad. I know that sounds funny with baby. Like, how do you know he's sad or whatever? But I just know as a mom, they change, and he did. He changed. And I remember crying that morning, thinking how he wasn't the same little baby. And looking back at pictures, you can see something with his eyes. They're different. I set him in the bouncy seat that morning and to read to Luke, so I could read and put on baby songs for him to watch. And he was sitting there, and then I noticed that I didn't hear Gideon anymore. He wasn't fussing, and he was limp again. He had a seizure. Then he was napping. My mom was meeting with her Bible study that morning, so I knew that Sally was down there, and she worked at the NICU or something, and she worked with the doctor that we wanted to get into. So she was pulling some strings to try to get us in with her, and but then I laid him down and to change his diaper, and he was having another. And I called Sally over, and she came over, and while changing him, he went into another one, and Sally was like, "No, you need to take him in. So you need to get him to the hospital." So he called 911 again, and I got on the phone with Dr. Flossie, the doctor that was in Ventura, who we had worked with while we were there, and I begged him to give us a room and to let us stay longer. We were debating whether to get transferred down to Tarzana with this other doctor. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all those details, but I asked them, this is something that they don't do, I guess, regularly, but I begged them to hook him up to doing for a longer period of time, like the one that they had done before where they didn't see anything and didn't do anything. They I said, you guys need to do it longer. So I got it where they put these wires coming out of his head, and he had 13 seizures because we were able to keep it on longer and be able to see that his brain was reacting differently than just putting it on for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. I don't know, it was a really hard time to watch that monitor every time he would have a seizure. Some of them were different. Some of them were these stare-off ones that were really weird, where he would not have any blinking of his eyes. They weren't always these jerky ones where his mouth would stuff, but still freaky if you see your baby doing that, I'm really thankful that we insisted on doing that. That kind of just further there was stuff going on with him. That was 13 hours he had that on, and then anyway, we ended up getting together with the other doctor and getting his dose right. He was on medication for 3 still is hard because Gideon's different. I can't put my finger on what it is with Gideon. He's definitely has had a lot of challenges since this. I mean, so we were told that these seizures were not because of the vaccination. And I just believed them for telling me that. So a year went by, and we had a couple more little episodes here and there, and I went in for his round of shots again, the same ones. And 2 weeks later, in January, almost to the day, the exact day, he was within 1 day, 3.5-minute seizure, and that was the longest seizure that he had. And I just was like, wow, I couldn't even. We started researching a little bit more. I just didn't have the brain power to look into it as much. I still don't. But when Gideon was getting to be about the kindergarten age, that was when we had to start really thinking about it, because in California, the law was that you had to be up to date on your vaccinations, or you couldn't go to school. So at that time, all the kids were going to public school, So I looked into different options, and Dr. Gold was willing to write a medical exemption. At that time, you could do that, but he said that we had to have everybody else up to date on their vaccinations. And Brian and I had done some research and watched some videos, and we had decided that we are not going to do this anymore with our kids. So that's kind of what pushed us into homeschooling, was the vaccine, because we couldn't send Gideon. But because we weren't going to do that again, he was coming up to where he needed to get the next dose, whatever that would be, the 5th dose it was. I'm like, I'm not about to make him mess up what he's already relearned and done with his brain all this time, because he went through years of therapy and different things. He was way behind on sitting up, walking, talking, and all kinds of things. And we're still dealing with things with Gideon now that I can't explain, and I can't put my finger on what happened with it when those seizures were going on. I mean, even looking back now, I think, gosh, when he was in that bouncy seat the first time that day, I had no idea that he had been going into seizures. What if it had been happening a couple days prior and I just didn't realize it? It was very apparent that day, but I think that there's more out there to these vaccinations, and I'm not an expert. I do not know. There's so many people so much more than me about the vaccines and this whole thing with them. I'm not one to say that I know, but I just know from my experience with my little boy that there is something that happened because of those vaccinations. And had I have known more, I mean, I would never have done it. I would never have gotten him for Adam. I mean, even Adam has, when he was younger, we went through years of some really hard things with him, OCD, and I don't know. I feel like there could be something with these vaccines that a lot of health things can be brought on by them. I'm just going by personal experience and our story. I wanted to share because I feel like there's so many people out there that don't know. With our research and with all the stuff that we've done in learning about this, there's so many stories that the child didn't make it, that there's death involved. involved, that they're way worse off than even where Gideon's at, because Gideon's pretty normal, but there is something about him that's different. I know that might sound mean, but I would never want him to feel like he's different. But it happened to him. And I feel like I want other people to know. Because then they can make a decision, or at least look into it a little bit more, maybe more than I even have. Like, what's in them? What's in those shots that you're putting into your child's body? Don't just go blindly believing the doctor. I mean, we had a great doctor. I love Dr. Gold. He was Brian's doctor when he was a little kid. He was an old school doctor. He called us in the hospital about Gideon. I'm not saying that he is at fault or anything like that. Like, I feel like these doctors don't really know, maybe, what's in these vaccines or study up on it very much from what I've done research on and stuff. I don't know. All I know is that this is just my down-to-earth story of what happened with our kid. And I won't do shots, you know. I can't. After knowing what I know and just watching him go through those seizures and things, how could I? But I just wanted to share at least a little piece of our story and what happened. And thankfully, Gideon's not on medicine anymore. We trained his brain, and they claimed it was childhood epilepsy because they had no other name for what he was going through, what it was. Thankfully, that it wasn't something bigger with a tumor or something huge that could have been really bad. And this was bad, in my opinion. And we love Gideon. He's so sweet and very matter of fact. And I just always wonder how things would have played out if he hadn't have had those vaccinations. I'm thankful for him, and I'm thankful for where God has us now, and we're all homeschooling, and who knows, maybe I wouldn't even be here where the place that we're at right now. I'm thankful for that, and I'm so thankful that God carried us through that. Like, I don't know how people get through stuff in this life without God. He was right there with us. He gave us the peace, and I love him so much, and I'm so thankful. But I just wanted to share, and I'm sorry if this is getting totally too long, but hopefully it's helpful to somebody. I was just thinking a little bit more about my video and why I decided to share it. I think there's a lot more talk these days about vaccinations, and I feel like seeing a real life story of a child that went through some side effects, it makes it a little bit more eye-opening to people. And if my story, if Gideon's story can shed a little bit of light on how the vaccines do cause, there's some side effects that are not talked about in the media or talked about from your doctor, and maybe this will help somebody look into it a little bit more, which I didn't do. I didn't look into it. I didn't have anybody to share this with me. I just thought that I'm supposed to do the vaccines because I'm supposed to do them. I didn't think to look into it. I just I didn't, and I wish I did, because I would love to take that back and not have him have to go through that. But everything happens for a reason. I do believe that God works out his story for all of us, and to God be the glory. I'm thankful that he didn't allow something worse to happen to Gideon. I'm thankful that he's worked through this trial and this thing in our lives. I just am so thankful, and I'm glad that I can have the opportunity to share this and maybe get the word out. I don't know how much help I can be, but I think for me, hearing real life stories is what makes it more eye-opening than just hearing some report, you know. But it's very interesting, and something that I recommend that everyone do before they make a decision to do the shots. Look into it a little bit. There's books out there. If I ever get into it a little bit more, to be able to share different books and different articles and things that I think are from wise sources and things like that, I will try to do that. But for now, this is our story, and hopefully it can help somebody.